Hi and welcome to this week's WoWFlash. It's just a short video series on the news from World of Warcraft in the past week, just as a bit of a catch-up, especially for smaller but important pieces of news that might have slipped through in more major videos that I'm doing. So, slight delay with this. Normally I would aim to get this out on Friday, but I went out last night and then watched the Wales game in the Euro. So what we've got this week is there's for my money, four important pieces of news. There's been quite a lot of news, I suppose, especially if you're a PvP player, but the focus of my channel is really more PvE. The first big piece of news, and this was a big enough piece of news for me to do a video on this, so I'll put a link to that there so you can see for yourself, is that they are restricting your ability to zoom your camera out in Legion, but just in case anyone missed that video, at the moment you can zoom your camera a certain way out using the interface options. You can then use a macro to apply a console script to zoom it out even further, which is not just useful for everyone but absolutely vital for certain people in raids. So the fact that this is going to be removed is now going to create a huge disadvantage to tanks and melee, especially if said tank or melee is also a raid leader. But further details of that are in that video, just click on that. Other things that have been mentioned are item upgrades, random item upgrades. Now there's been a lot of sort of fallout from this, principally because people have not understood how it's going to work. So the idea is, just as in WoD, you could get a piece of loot, like from a quest reward is how it's done in WoD, and it might be a green quality reward. And then there's a chance it could be upgraded to a blue quality reward, so a better item level. Or even an epic quality reward, even higher item level, so a better item. This sort of thing is going to be done in Legion as well, but with the stuff you get from like some dungeons and various other places, especially at level cap, there is a chance for this random upgrade to keep going. So the idea is this: you get the item, there's a chance, there's an internal roll done, there's a chance for it to be a better version, so +5 item level, say. But if you get that, then there's another internal roll done, which gives it another chance, and it might increase it by another 5 item levels, and so on. And I think this can go up to like 15 times or something like that in theory. And a lot of, but how far it can go sort of depends on what the current content is. So when the game first launches, it'll go up to whatever, a certain level. Once, you know, raids have been out for a little bit and there's plenty of people with like mythic gear, and especially like mythic dungeon loot, stuff like that, then the cap will be raised. So in other words, everything stays dynamic. And all this is part of the idea that world quests still stay relevant as you go through the expansion. So they're not going to stay at the item levels they are now. They get better, not just with you, but also better with the as the expansion progresses. So a lot of people have said, oh, well, we could just get a random piece of loot that's like as good as mythic gear. Well, that's a bit crap, isn't it? They've been keen to point out the chances of this are very, very low. It's just that the chance exists. Now, let's look at it this way. Let's say you imagine, this is just pulling a number out of my head, but it seems reasonable to me. Let's say there's a 10% chance of this upgrade, because I'm just thinking, you know, when you get quest rewards, it's not rare you get one randomly upgraded to blue or epic, is it? It just doesn't happen all the time. So I'm going to say about 10%. So you could argue 1 out of every 10 items you get that could qualify for this could randomly have +5%, +5 item level, sorry. So then there's another internal roll, again another 10%. So 10% of 10% is 1%. So there's a 1% chance in actual fact it'll be +10 item levels. And then another roll, so there's a 1 in 1,000 chance, or a 0.1% chance that it goes to +15 item levels. Now, +15 item levels is not really all that huge. It's a nice upgrade. If you get it, you think, oh yeah, that's nice. But think about it. At this stage, we're already only a 1 in 1,000 chance. So in other words, roughly every 1,000 pieces of loot you get, one of them will get this +15 item level upgrade. You probably don't get 1,000 pieces of loot, even in a whole expansion for most characters. But then to go further, so if we're talking about this successfully happening 15 times to get a really beefy upgrade, that's like 10 to the power of 15, which I'm going to have to use American money here because there's a billion means a different thing in different places. But we'll use American money. This would basically be 1 in 1,000 trillion in American terms, like American trillion. 1 in 1,000 trillion chance of getting that ultimate upgrade. The chance of even one individual getting that in the whole expansion is slim at best. So what they're saying is that realistically speaking, you might get a modest upgrade at some point during the expansion. It's not going to be a common thing. So people, and even if someone got extremely lucky and had this 1 in 1,000 trillion chance of getting the item, even Mythic Raiders are not going to complain because it's like one item. Their overall item level is not going to be boosted massively by this. So there's really no need to sweat this, in my personal opinion anyway. The next thing is the news that Hellfire Citadel, when the pre-patch goes live, is going to be nerfed by 30%. And people have got in their minds, oh, this is fantastic. We'll be able to roll over the bosses we haven't killed yet, be a piece of piss. I am going to caution on this one. It's not as good as it sounds. Now, the first thing to note is there's sort of two things here. One is very frequently these raids are easier to do with the pre-patch. And the usual reason for that is because when we get the next expansion's talents and toolkit, we become stronger. Now, this is not going to happen with the pre-patch. We're actually going to become weaker. We're going to do less damage. And there's a number of reasons for this. Of course, everyone's getting a very, very different toolkit. And it's allowed Blizzard to be able to sort of tune that differently as well. Also, remember what happens when you're in a raid. You all get the raid buffs. Like, you get a mastery buff, you get a stats buff, you get a crit buff, spell power, attack power buff, blah, 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 blah. All that's gone. None of that anymore. It's all gone. So we're all weaker just because of that as well. So although Hellfire Citadel may be nerfed by 30% compared to now, we as players will also be nerfed when it comes out. We won't be doing as much damage in terms of raw numbers. Now, I'm not saying it's exactly in tune. I'm not saying that Hellfire Citadel will be exactly as difficult as it is now. It might be a bit easier. In some ways, it may be a bit harder. I actually don't know. All I'm saying is don't get too delirious about this, thinking, oh, 30% nerf, so that boss we're struggling with at the moment, we'll just roll over it. I don't think it's going to work out that way. And in fact, there could be difficulties. You probably ought to check for the spec you play, because remember, you're going to lose certain abilities, and if you find you use those abilities a lot on certain fights, you're going to be without them. Now, I'm going to be doing a little rundown on that, specifically for Retribution Paladins in Hellfire Citadel, when the pre-patch goes live, in a video that will be coming out within the next 8 days. Assuming Blizzard don't change anything else, that'll be coming out probably a week tomorrow, or within a week tomorrow. It might come out a little bit earlier. It all depends on what comes out this week with any new builds on the PTR or beta. But for other specs, it's well worth just having a look at what your toolkit's going to be like. Go on PTR and just think to yourself, how do I play each of these fights on Hellfire Citadel? And is not having that anymore going to hinder me? You might actually look at something else you get in instead and think, actually, that's going to make it even better for me. But it's worth having a look so you don't get any nasty surprises when you do your first raid. And the last thing to note is something a little bit... Blizzard's... For all the good that there's coming in Legion, there's definitely more content. All the things that were bad about Worlds of Draenor seem to not be the case in Legion. But for all that, they do seem to be bringing out statements on their philosophy, which just seems to be at odds with what people would really want. The latest one, there have been developer Q&As for the last few weeks, every week. It was the turn of PvP this week. Now, I'm not going to go through all that, of course, because PvP is not my focus. I'm sure there'll be PvP players who are doing their own videos and that. But there was one comment that stuck out for me, because this applies equally to PvE. And it was the statement that they are not tuning for full artifacts yet. They said they're tuning for Legion launch. If they also said, or Helinka also said, Brian Helinka, that they're not happy with the current balance of specs. Now, there's a couple of worrying issues with that. One is, yes, we know tuning is going to go on right till the 11th hour, yeah. But to actually say they're not happy with the balance, I mean, you would expect them at this point to be say, the balance is sort of there, it just needs tweaking. That would be the usual line to come out. The fact that it's not the line to come out suggests that they are really struggling, because they've got to have it reasonable. They don't have to have final tuning done, of course, until the end of August, but they've got to have the mechanics at least set, even if it's not entirely tuned, for a couple of weeks, maybe, something like that, when a pre-patch comes out. Because it doesn't matter if there's a disparity between specs when that comes out. I mean, it's only out for a few weeks. It's what happens when Legion goes live that matters. But the other thing, and this is what concerns me, so they say they're going to tune it for when Legion goes live, but it's not tuned for full artifacts. So people who are able to rush ahead with their artifacts, you know they're going to become more powerful anyway because the artifacts make you more powerful. But perhaps they become like out of proportion more powerful, these people who are able to get more artifact power more quickly or play the game more often. But then also, that means there's going to become a point where they think, okay, at this point, we expect a lot of people to have, say, half full artifacts. Are they going to retune then? And then there's going to come a point where they decide, okay, most people should now have a pretty full artifact for at least one of their specs, so we need to retune now. It suggests they're going to have a constant process of retuning. We are used to retuning of specs in patches, like content between tiers. Like, let's say we would expect a tuning to go through between different raids coming out, because obviously things like the set bonuses and the trinkets that come out will change the balance of power between different specs. But this suggests it might happen within that time, more frequently than that. There could be a constant tuning process. Now, I mean, it's going to make it very, very difficult to really tie down what you should be using, because like when you tune certain abilities, it's going to change priority of things. It's going to make it, it's going to make me very productive, I suppose, as a guide producer. But for people who sort of not necessarily wanted to work these things out themselves, they don't spend that much time on the game and want to go for a guide, it might be quite difficult to find ones that are going to be up to date for you, because they could easily, it sounds like they might be changing it every couple of months. Every 2 months there might be a new tuning pass go out. Ooh. I mean, I think one thing is for certain, if this is the case, they probably will not be doing... There's sort of already very strong rumours that the artifacts are not going to make it into the next expansion anyway. It's just going to be a thing for this expansion. I certainly don't think they're going to be wanting to do it for the next expansion, or anything like it if it's this much trouble. But anyway, those are the 4 key bits of news that I think that were important and certainly relevant to my channel from the last week. Let me know what you think about them in comments below, and hope you found it useful. If you did, don't forget, as always, to like, comment and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you later.